Computer.
Hello everyone, my name is Niitroo and I am a junior yoga researcher living in Amsterdam. And with me today, this is Dr. Shirley Telles. She is one of the world's leading yoga researchers, and she will be presenting her keynote on yoga therapy and compassion at the Yoga Therapy Conference on 11th of May in Amsterdam. Welcome, Dr. Shirley.
Thank you, and greetings from India.
And Dr. Shirley Telles, can you say a few words about yourself and your work?
Right. Well, my journey with yoga really began after I completed a course in conventional medicine. After that, I wanted to do research on the brain, neuroscience. And when I was given a topic to pick, I had to choose between studying what happens to the brain in coma or in hypnosis and conditions like that. And that's when I decided that none of them worked for me. Coma was too dull and sad as well. And I asked my guide for something different, or I wanted to even change the discipline that I'm studying. And then my guide said, why don't you try yoga? And being in India, it was strange that my only prior contact with yoga was a book which my mother had then and even now has in her bookcase on yoga. And I had hardly looked at it. And when my guide arranged for me to both read about yoga and practice yoga, that's when I decided I wanted to do the research and make it my life, really.
Yeah, and can you say a few words about your work as well? I know you have studied both yoga therapy for all sorts of physical problems and also mental illnesses. So why do you think yoga therapy and compassion, how are these two concepts connected, or how is compassion relevant for yoga therapy?
First of all, yoga has to be understood in its entirety. It's not just, of course, physical practices. By now, everyone's understood it goes far beyond that. It's something which is mental. It involves a change in attitude. We always say that in yoga, when you're faced with a challenge, you can react differently, or you can choose not to react at all. So that is the sense that yoga gives a person of how to respond to a situation and a sort of a building of the inner strength. Well, that's how patients heal. But what should the therapist bring to the patient? The therapist needs to bring knowledge which goes far beyond the physical practice. And that knowledge has to be imparted because many of it covers different, very delicate things, like dealing with the way a person deals with other people. Sometimes they are sensitive issues. Sometimes they are related to problems which a person faces in their family. And there are things that they cannot do about it. Sometimes it's dealing with childhood trauma. So when a therapist is talking to a patient, they need to be able to bring the adequate amount of kindness. I don't even use the word compassion. So that it's not from a position of a person talking like a preacher, but a person talking to a friend.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty clear now. And I know from doing yoga research myself that it can be sometimes a difficult task to study yoga because it's such a broad set of spiritual practices. It can be as you said, the physical side, the asanas, it can be the pranayama, it can be the meditation, and also there is the philosophy of yoga. Do you think there is this one part of yoga that is responsible for cultivating more compassion in people?
Well, as I said in the beginning, yoga has to be seen in its entirety. We talk about 5 levels of functioning. The physical level, the pranic level, the level of the instinct, the intellect, and finally, when the four of them are knit together, you come to the core of a person's being, their essence. So when one is using yoga as a therapy, one has to have a knowledge of the traditional texts, which one helps one to see asanas, pranayama, as well as the various schools which have arisen in the last 200 years, like say the Iyengar school or the Vinyasa method. These are all very, very useful for yoga therapy, but all of them are recent derivations of what are described in the traditional texts. And by placing them in the context of the original texts, a whole lot of things fall in place and a person gets a better understanding of yoga therapy in its entirety.
So did I understand correctly that basically if you want to cultivate compassion, you should both know the philosophy, do the asanas, know more about ancient text and meditate. So basically the entirety of yoga should be done.
Exactly. And it's not that you really need to have a separate session for the theory, but theory can be incorporated while practicing asanas. And that's the way I like to do it.
Okay. So, and do you know of any particular obstacles that can come up in the working with cultivating compassion in yoga therapy?
Oh yeah, one of the main things is if a person gets so lost in the problems of the patient. As I said, they're not approaching a patient from a position of a preacher or of a higher person, but rather like a friend. So in that process, they can lose their boundaries, and actually the therapist themselves can bear a lot of the pain of the patient. And that's not good, because it could be damaging to the therapist. And of course, in the long run, if the therapist is damaged, they're not going to be able to help the patient. So yoga teaches you how to retain these boundaries while at the same time being compassionate.
Okay, thank you. That's a really nice answer. And so that's it from me. Do you have anything else that you would like to add yourself before we conclude?
Well, I'd just like to say that I think this is an extremely important topic, because understanding that yoga is more than the physical or even the mental is very important. And for a yoga therapist to know how to deal with a patient with compassion, but not to lose the boundaries, I think is extremely important. And I look forward to being part of the discussion in May and getting a chance to share whatever I know and hear the many other people there.
So thank you again, Dr. Shirley Telles. It's such an honor to have you with us here today, and see you again. So at the Yoga Therapy Conference on 11th of May in Amsterdam. So thank you.
Thank you.